For an entire decade, the Harry Potter films just completely captivated us, right? They brought this whole world of magic to life. But, the most incredible spells, they weren't cast with wands. They were cast by this amazing crew and cast who were facing some truly unbelievable challenges. So let's get into it and uncover the real secrets behind the magic.
So let's just cut right to the chase with the biggest question of all. Was any of the magic we saw up there on the screen actually real? It sounds like a pretty straightforward question, right? But the answer, well, it's probably not what you think.
The answer is, yeah, in a way it was. But it wasn't wizardry. The real magic was just pure human creativity. It was incredible ingenuity, a ton of hard work, and some seriously brilliant problem solving that made Hogwarts and everything in it feel so real.
Okay, so first up, let's pull back the curtain and see how they actually built this magical world. We're going to look at the reality behind the magic.
So for that very first film, the director, Chris Columbus, he was all about realism. And for that iconic Great Hall feast scene, you guessed it, every single piece of food you see on those tables was 100% real. I mean, a genuine, incredible feast laid out for the cast. Yeah, but there was one little problem. Those hot studio lights were relentless. After just a couple of days, all of that beautiful food started to rot, and the set was filled with this absolutely unbearable smell. It got so bad, the young actors could barely even be in the room to film their scenes.
Well, you can bet they learned their lesson fast. For all the movies after that, the crew came up with this genius solution. They made molds of all the real food and then created thousands of perfect, lifelike copies out of resin. The feast looked just as amazing, but, without the terrible smell. And this hands-on approach wasn't just for the food. Think about that wild, chaotic night bus scene whipping through London traffic. You'd think that's all CGI, right? Nope. It was a classic, old-school camera trick. They just filmed the bus moving at a normal speed, while all the other cars around it drove super slowly. Then they just sped the whole thing up in editing. Brilliant, right? But okay, the magic wasn't just in the props and the sets, it was in the people. So now, let's look at the human side of it all, the actors' realities.
I mean, can you imagine growing up on a film set like that? The pressure was just immense. Emma Watson has actually talked about how after the fourth film, the sheer weight of being that famous, that globally recognized, it all just became so overwhelming that she seriously thought about quitting. She said losing her freedom was genuinely scary.
But even with all that pressure, there were these moments that just proved how perfectly cast they were. So for the third film, director Alfonso Cuarón gave the main trio a little homework. Write an essay about your character. And what happened was perfect. Emma Watson, just like Hermione, hands in this long, super detailed essay. Daniel Radcliffe writes a simple one-page summary. Very Harry. And Rupert Grint, in a move that is pure Ron Weasley, he just didn't turn one in at all.
And the commitment to these characters, it just goes so deep. From the very beginning of the first film, J.K. Rowling gave one actor the single biggest secret of the entire series, Alan Rickman. He was told the whole story of Snape, his love for Lily, and where his loyalties truly were. And knowing that secret allowed him to fill every single scene, every pause, every glance, with this hidden depth that we only understood at the very end. Of course, when you're adapting 1,000-page books into movies, you have to make some tough calls. So now let's take a look at what got lost in translation, from the page to the screen. Okay, let's start with a big one, something book fans talk about all the time, Ginny Weasley. In the books, she is an absolute force of nature. She's brave, she's funny, a really powerful personality. In the films, though, her role got cut down a lot, and she often comes across as much more passive and shy, which was a change that, honestly, disappointed a lot of fans.
And some characters just vanished entirely. Peeves the Poltergeist was actually filmed for the first movie. The late, great Rick Mayall played him, but all his scenes were cut just to save time and keep the story moving. And then there's Winky the House Elf. She was so important to Barty Crouch Jr.'s backstory in the book, but she was completely left out of the movie, which really simplified that whole complicated plot.
And it wasn't just characters that got the axe. Some really key plot points that gave the story so much more depth were also left behind. The films never get into Voldemort's tragic origin. The whole thing about him being conceived under a love potion, and that's why he's incapable of love. They also cut the huge detail that the prophecy could have been about Neville Longbottom, which adds so much to his journey. And of course, Hermione's passionate activism for house elf rights, SPEW, was completely gone. Okay, but for everything that was cut, the filmmakers added this incredible layer of detail. So let's do a quick run-through of some of the best hidden secrets and symbols they tucked away for us.
Let's start with the headmaster himself. The name Dumbledore is actually an Old English word for bumblebee. How great is that? J.K. Rowling said she picked it because she just pictured him always wandering the halls of Hogwarts, humming to himself, just like a little buzzing bee.
All right, this next one is so clever. You know the secret code you have to dial to get into the Ministry of Magic through the phone booth? It's 62442. So why those numbers? Well, if you look at an old phone keypad, those numbers spell out MAGIC, a perfect little Easter egg hidden right in plain sight.
And of course, there's the Mirror of Erised. The genius is right there in the name. Erised is just desire spelled backwards. It literally tells you what it does. It shows you your heart's deepest desire. So simple, but so brilliant.
But making all of this incredible magic happen, well, it wasn't always fun and games. For this last part, let's talk about some of the truly unforgettable challenges the cast and crew had to face on set. So, for the underwater challenge in Goblet of Fire, Daniel Radcliffe spent a grand total of 41 hours submerged in this massive water tank. Can you imagine? The shoot was so grueling that he ended up with not one, but 2 separate ear infections. That's the kind of physical toll we're talking about here.
And tragically, the risks were very, very real. During a stunt rehearsal for Deathly Hallows, Daniel Radcliffe's main stunt double, a man named David Holmes, had a terrible accident. A planned explosion went wrong, and the injury he sustained left him paralyzed from the chest down. It was an absolutely devastating moment that really highlights the dangers that stunt performers face every day.
But out of that awful tragedy, an incredible bond was formed. Daniel Radcliffe and David Holmes became extremely close friends. Together, they even started a podcast called Cunning Stunts to help raise awareness about the risks involved in stunt work. And just recently, Radcliffe was the executive producer on a really powerful documentary all about David's life and his incredible resilience.
Which really brings us right back to where we started. Knowing all of this, the rotting food, the clever camera tricks, the secret Alan Rickman knew, the personal struggles, the profound human cost, does that take away from the magic? Or does knowing the very real, very human story behind it all actually make that magic feel even more powerful?